So good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Pirate Parents Live. My name is Carter Fenwick. I'm the Associate Director of Parent and Family Programs and your moderator for the conversation today. So today we're going to go over new student and family orientation, which is taking place this summer for the class of 2026. It's an event that the university puts on for parents and students especially to welcome them to the ECU family. So with me today we have Corey Schwabrow, who is the Assistant Director of Student Transitions, and we also have Caroline Hill, who is a Lead Academic Advisor for the College of Education. They are both on the orientation committee and experts on this, so that's why we're tapping them to get their insight today. If you are tuning in live to this session and watching it on Facebook Live, you can put your questions into the chat section. We have some colleagues who are monitoring that and will be able to answer your questions there. If you are watching the recorded version on Facebook, you can still put your questions into the chat section. My office will get that notification and we'll be able to answer your questions there. So let's get started. So Corey, can you briefly go over the orientation schedule and what students can expect and what parents and families can expect?
Sure. So we have full days planned, a day and a half of orientation. Start bright and early at 8 a.m. on day one. Students and parents will check in here at the main student center, our beautiful building on campus, and we'll take you through sessions on academic info, logistical info, things that you'll need to know as you move through the summer and into the fall and getting ready for their freshman year. Lots of pirate spirit. We have some great upperclassmen who are our orientation assistants this year, our OAs as we call them, and they are so excited to welcome their new classmates and get them excited about being new pirates and answer your questions, both students and parents, about anything that might be going on here.
Awesome. I think you mentioned that parents and students, they kind of separate during the orientation sessions?
They will, yes. We'll start off the morning together, but then we do take the students out to go meet with the orientation assistants and spend some time in small groups with them, getting to know them as upperclassmen and getting to know their other new students here at the university, while parents will go through some informational sessions that the students might not necessarily be interested in right now. They're a little more focused on making friends, kind of getting to know the university, where we know parents usually want to know a little bit more about, hey, can you tell me about dining? Or can you tell me about how student health services works? Can you give me some background if my student has an IEP or a 504 plan or something like that? We can certainly give you sessions and information on that, so you have that information as you move through the summer and into the fall. And that really gives the students kind of a chance to feel more at home here and feel like, hey, I made the right choice. I'm excited to be here at ECU. I'm excited to meet these new friends of mine. And the parents also feel more comfortable because they're getting the information that they really need to have their questions answered.
Yep. And so also with that, you know, this summer is a very important summer of transition, you know, for your students especially, but also for you as parents and family members of a, you know, student going off to college at ECU. And so this orientation session also gives your student that opportunity to have a little bit of independence before you know, drop them off in August. So that's why there is that little bit of separation of some sessions, you know, going to separately students from their parents and families. So that's also, you know, why there is that separation. But at orientation, what are kind of the big main topics of information that students and families will kind of take away from orientation as a whole? You've touched on them a little bit, but can you elaborate on them?
Sure. So academic information, they'll have a chance to meet, students will have a chance to meet with an advisor in a group setting and kind of finalize their fall schedule, which is really important. Parents will get, like I said, information on student health services or maybe how to pay their tuition bill, dining plans. Students and parents will hear campus living in together and talk about how what to expect when they move in the August and what it's like to live with a roommate who you may not know. So they'll have a chance to do that. Parents will have a chance to ask questions of our administrators, our Dean of Students, our Associate Dean of Students, our Associate Chancellor of Student Affairs, and talk about, maybe any burning questions that they've had over the last day and a half since they've been here. We kind of end with that. And I'm really excited to debut this year our Pirate Parent and Student panel, where parents will get a chance to ask questions of current students and of current Pirate parents and what their experience has been like. So it's really a time where lots of information. It's going to be overwhelming. I'll just say that up front. But we hope you'll get your questions answered and kind of feel like, hey, they talked about this or they touched on this. And then if you have more questions, we can certainly follow up with that. But it kind of gives you a good idea of what it's like to be a student and a parent of a student here at ECU.
Awesome, thank you. And you did mention that students will have time to meet with an advisor and finalize their schedules. Caroline, this is your expertise, your area of expertise. So can you talk about what that meeting will look like for students?
Definitely. So registration for incoming freshmen started on May 2nd, but this is an ongoing process. So registration can last throughout the entire summer. This process is done through a website called PIER, which stands for Pirate Introduction to ECU Registration. This is a very in-depth website that talks about all of the degrees offered at ECU, course recommendations that you should select from based on your intended major, and then how to actually register for those classes. And so what we have encouraged students to do is prior to orientation, going ahead and reviewing that website and those courses and starting on that schedule. We understand that this is a new system for students that they might not be as used to, and there might be some hesitancy about if the schedule they enrolled in is accurate, which is why we specifically give them the opportunity during orientation to have it reviewed by an advisor. So near the end of day 2, you will go to a computer lab with advisors within your college, and we will look at the schedule that you started or enrolled in through PIER.
Awesome, thank you. You did mention that students can go ahead and take a look at PIER. So in addition to that, do you have any other recommendations for students to, things that students can do to prepare for that meeting with their advisor at orientation prior to going to orientation?
Definitely. So of course, reviewing that website is going to be extremely helpful. It will actually show you how to verify that your major is correct in the system and the steps to take if for some reason perhaps that major has changed since you applied to the university. And then again, it outlines those courses that you need. We encourage students prior to orientation to, even if you can't get a full 15 to 16 credit hours, which is the recommended sequence for your first semester, at least having a start on that schedule is going to make that appointment with your advisor a little more seamless. But if for some reason, for any reason, you can't register for classes prior to coming to orientation, we'll ensure that that you have a full schedule and that's appropriate for your intended degree prior to leaving orientation.
So I'm sure there are a few parents or family members who are tuning in and are thinking, well, what if my student is undecided on their major? Well, how does orientation and finding, a schedule work for them?
Definitely. So it is not uncommon to be undecided on your major, and orientation is a great opportunity to hear about degrees housed at ECU that you're most interested in. So for starters, what I would encourage a student to do in that scenario is go ahead and review PIER now and the different majors housed at ECU to kind of narrow that scope some, because you'll have the opportunity to hear about some degrees at ECU, but you want to have maybe 2, even 3 degrees that you're interested in learning about so that you can kind of gear your sessions towards that pathway. So at the end of day 1, students have the opportunity to attend 2 different introduction to major sessions, which is where someone will be presenting details about the degree, the types of classes you might take, employment outlook, etc. And so knowing ahead of time, the 2 degrees that you want to hear about during those sessions is really, really helpful. If still undecided after those sessions, at the beginning of day 2, we will have a session where students can meet one-on-one with an academic advisor to talk about another degree that they're interested in, or maybe even hear more about the degree that they learned about on day 1. It isn't a bad thing if you are still undecided near the end of orientation. We have a set office on campus called the Major Advisement Program. We call it MAP, and it is a set of advisors who are trained to work with our undecided students. So they are focused on career exploration and assisting you in what classes to take while you're figuring out which pathway is the best fit for you. So there is a set of advisors. You will be assigned one and can be undecided for as long as you need to be until you find out what's the right fit. Finally, we also offer a freshman seminar course called COAD 1000, which is offered to every student, but we do have several sections that are geared for undecided students that have more of a focus on career exploration and learning about the degrees housed on campus. So during that session with an undecided advisor, mentioning that you'd like to take that class, if you think that would be helpful, is a recommendation.
Awesome, thank you. There are so many resources for students who are undecided on their major, so we don't want to put too much pressure on a student ahead of time. And so if your student is undecided, it is okay. We have multiple resources there to assist them along the way. So one more question for you, Caroline. So what if a student, comes to orientation, sets their academic schedule, but then, maybe 2 days later would like to change that schedule? How does that work for them?
Certainly, and so that is certainly allowed. Students have up through the first 5 days of the semester to freely change their schedule through PowerPort. So depending on the reason, we have some recommendations depending on what that might be. So if perhaps after leaving orientation and doing some reflecting, maybe you find that a different degree is the better fit for you. In that case, you would go to Peer and look at the course guide that offers course recommendations for that intended degree and make adjustments as necessary. But the next important thing would be to contact the advising center for that new degree, which again, all that information is housed on Peer, because you want to first get your record updated, but also be connected with an academic advisor who will be your go-to person, but can also do that check of your fall schedule since changes will have occurred. If perhaps the reason for the change is simply because maybe there's a time conflict now because of an extracurricular, or you just have the desire to take an alternate course. Again, that course guide in Peer will outline the courses that you have to choose from, whether any of them are priority courses or, assorted courses to choose from. But then we also encourage in that scenario to reach out to your assigned academic advisor because certain degrees are a little more sequenced than others. And so there might be certain majors where you have a priority course that's extremely important. We don't want to necessarily get rid of it and get off sequence. There are other degrees that are a little more flexible. So connecting with your advisor and talking through those changes before making them is advised. And then finally, what often happens at the end of the summer is AP credit will start coming in from the previous year, and you might be getting college credit for an AP course that you took if you received a 3 or higher on the exam. And so connecting with your advisor in that case will ensure that we aren't duplicating any coursework. We want to ensure that your fall schedule is courses that you need, not necessarily something you'll already be bringing in credit for. So connecting with your advisor and making those appropriate changes is best.
Awesome. So I think when in doubt, connect with the advisor about the changes that you want to make.
Correct.
Because they're changeable.
Yes.
They're most likely changeable within the time frame. Awesome. So next, I think this is a fun question. So what are each of your best tips for students and families attending orientation this summer?
Be prepared for a lot of walking. So wear good shoes. We, for those with mobility issues, we do have a golf cart, an ADA golf cart that we'll be able to use to help get you around campus. But for the most part, there is a lot of walking between buildings. As we know, in eastern North Carolina, it rains a lot. And you don't always know when it's coming, so bring an umbrella. Air conditioning can work sometimes too well in these buildings, so maybe a sweater or a jacket that you can kind of layer on and off as needed would be great. And be ready for that information overload. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but it is a lot of information for a day and a half. So just kind of know that's going to happen and be prepared for it and embrace it.
Yes, I was just going to add to not stress during the situation because you will, again, have that information overload. Like you mentioned, the advisor is, your go-to person, and we are available throughout the entire summer and during every year you're here at ECU. And so please don't ever be scared to ask questions. It's what we're here for, to help y'all.
Awesome. So I'm going to put in my best tip, and no one asked, but I'm going to give it anyway. My tip and advice is to wear your patience pants. Like Corey said, it is an overwhelming amount of information, but it is important information, and some of it's really fun information. And there are a lot of emotions that I'm sure you will be experiencing, you know, just being on this campus with your student, knowing that they will be here in August can be very emotional, both exciting and just maybe some conflicting emotions as well. So we know that it's overwhelming and it can be emotional, but please wear your patient's pants, pack them in your bag. They go with every outfit, I promise. But also, you know, the staff are here and will be patient and work with you all. But we definitely want you to get all the information that you need, but we also want you to enjoy this time with your student on campus. And so that was my only tip I wanted to throw in there. But my last question to wrap up, are there any final reminders that you want to give out? Maybe repeat the tips again, or, you know, anything else that we haven't mentioned yet that you want to mention?
I would say for us, students be checking your email, your ECU email. Please have your students check your ECU email, their ECU email, because that's where we're sending information about arrival, how to check into the residence hall if you're staying on campus at that night, where to check in the morning, what food options are available that morning, where to get your parking sticker validated. That's all included in the email that we send to the student's ECU email address. So please make sure you're checking that, or having your student check that, I should say. Also, yes, there is a lot of information, but if you are taking it all in and you get home and you're like, oh, I have a question about this, or I have a question about that, please contact our office. Or any office really, because we're all here to help. But our office will, if we don't have the answer, we will get you to the department that does have the answer. We will get you to the person that does have the answer. And trust me, it happens all the time. We get emails and phone calls from parents that are like, I just came to orientation last week, but I totally forgot to ask this question, or I was thinking about it on the way home, or my student brought this up. Please contact us. We are so happy to help. We're thrilled that you're going to be a part of Pirate Nation. We're thrilled that you're going to be an ECU Pirate. We're here to help. We're here to make your time here a great time. So just reach out and get your questions answered, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah, and just to add, advising will also be reaching out via your ECU email, and so checking that regularly will also potentially get some schedule questions that you have answered prior to orientation, but then again, reviewing peer, which outlines so much important information for you to have not only prior to orientation, but following orientation is going to be one of your best resources for the academic side of things.
Awesome. Thank you both for joining me today, and thank you for tuning in. As Corey mentioned, if you have any questions about new student orientation this summer, you can throw them at her office at the Office of Student Transitions. Their email is orientation@ecu.edu. The phone number is 252-328-4173. And you can also visit their orientation website. There is an example schedule, and there are lots of questions or answers to your questions already up there, just kind of about how the process will look for orientation. So that is orientation.ecu.edu. And I will echo what Corey said as well. My office, you know, the Office of Parent and Family Programs, I was going to say Parent Transitions. Parent and Family Programs is also available for all of your questions, not only this summer, but, you know, the 4 years that your student will be here. So reach out to us as well. But thank you for joining.